Entering the atmosphere in T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast from OmegaMetroid.com. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Doomino Crossing. What is going on today, Doom? How are you doing, my friend?
Pretty good, my friend Andy. Last week we talked about, a bunch of games that I've been beating. I finally beat Prince of Persia. I replayed GTA 4 and actually beat it and the DLCs for the first time. And just last night, I replayed GTA 5 again. And, it's really interesting going back to, to a game like GTA 5 because, it gets so ingrained into your brain and you kind of take it for granted. And you have these ideas about it, and I kind of had a similar thing when we did our Prime 3 definitive ranking episode, and going back and replaying GTA 5 again, it made me appreciate, just how ahead of that time that game was. Because honestly, it feels like a game that could have came out like 3 or 4 years ago, but it's like over 10 years old now. And like, for what that game offers, and some of the writing in that game, and even visually, like the game still looks incredible today. Like it really, I feel like, stands the test of time for the most part. There's a couple of nitpicks here and there, but it is, it's just truly a phenomenal game. And yeah, that's pretty much been my life. I've just been, delving back into these old classics that I haven't played in so long and kind of re-experiencing them with a fresh coat of paint.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, I have to take your word for all three of those games because I've never played any of them. People always look at me like I have three heads when I say I've never played a Grand Theft Auto game. And I don't know, I never went out of my way not to play them. I never have for some reason. And we've talked about this a little bit in our Discord, but I actually would be like pretty curious to check out like Vice City and GTA 5 and I don't know, maybe even GTA 6 when it comes out. Because yeah, like I really don't know a whole lot about them. And I remember asking in the Discord, like guys, what makes this different from like a standard open world game? And I got a lot of like kind of cool responses. So maybe I should check it out for myself. I've been struggling this week with games though, man. I've been trying to finish Horizon and like I think I got like 5 hours in this week. It was nuts.
And I think I know why. Because you are definitely more of a handheld gamer in the Pro Switch era, and right now you're kind of bottlenecked to that console experience, which is
a little
not your preferred style. Honestly, and I've been thinking about this. I think you should actually consider investing in a Steam Deck. I've thought about it, to
be honest with you. I don't know if I'm going to get my full juice out of it, but maybe I would if I had it, because you're right. This is a little Spiteri lore here, but the way that my house is set up, so my TV and everything is in the basement. However, my dog doesn't like going downstairs, and to be honest, my wife doesn't really like going downstairs either because it's freezing down here. So typically, if I'm playing, it's usually upstairs, and then conversely, like my wife falls asleep 30 seconds into a movie, she's like, I'm awake, and then she'll be snoring, and so I'm like, okay, whatever. So usually we'll go to bed and I'll be playing on my Switch. So it definitely works out a little bit better for me, but yeah, I've thought about the Steam Deck before. Actually, my brother-in-law has one, and it's a cool piece of hardware. I don't know if I'm ready to pull that trigger yet.
Well, it's less so even about like the visual stuff. It's more just about playing the stuff that isn't able to run on the Switch. Stuff like and Horizon was one of the first things that came to mind. It's like now that PlayStation is slowly porting their library over to PC and stuff like that, and like, I don't know, obviously, your wants and interests more than me, but I've just been looking at it and I was like, I think this might be the perfect device for Andy. Even though you're not really much of a PC guy.
Well, but that's the thing. I don't like playing on PC because I don't like typically playing with mouse and keyboard, and I like sitting on my couch, not just like in my podcasting chair, which is always creaking and falling apart, as I'm sure our listeners could hear. So yeah, I might have to cross that bridge one day, but let's move on here and let's talk about, we're going to talk about some Metroid today, obviously. But one thing that I do think that we should talk about, sort of speaking about the Switch and Microsoft a little bit. That was a poor segue, I'm sorry. But we
hey, Steam Deck, Switch, it's there.
It's a reach, but we'll take it. We did indeed have a Nintendo partner direct this last week, which to me says, I don't care how many industry people, and everybody's reporting on this rumor, by the way, that the Switch 2 is not going to launch until 2025. I don't know. I'm not buying it. I won't buy it till I see it. Like, if that just says to me, like, if there's no like legit Nintendo direct with like Nintendo games, I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to believe that the Switch 2 is that far away. But nevertheless, who knows? Only Jesus knows at this point. But what I do know is that they had this Nintendo partner direct, and I gotta be honest with you, I didn't actually watch it myself. I just kind of looked at the games that were announced, read a quick synopsis, and I think that was enough for me because I didn't see anything that like completely blew my mind. A few games that I thought looked kind of interesting, which I'll go over in a second, but I don't know, taking a look at this, like anything that really sticks out to you as being like, yeah, sweet, this is coming to Nintendo Switch from one of our third-party partners.
Oh, there was one thing in particular, the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection. Such a hype announcement. The fact that it's coming to Nintendo at all, because even the PS2 and Xbox versions, those never came to GameCube. So these are the first time that they're playable on a Nintendo console, which I think is awesome because I absolutely love those classic Battlefront titles. But on top of that, these are coming to all platforms, obviously, but it's also including all of the Xbox exclusive content from Battlefront 2 and a bunch of new content that was unreleased prior. So it really is like this full, complete package.
Okay,
and so
that's cool.
I feel like I gotta say I've really been enjoying these retro Star Wars collections. The Dark Forces remaster by Night Dive, one of my favorite studios, was just released really recently. Another game that I'm super excited, is finally, playable on like modern platforms that, hasn't really seen the light of day in decades. And so, yeah, I've really been enjoying this retro Star Wars renaissance. Really hoping for a Rogue Squadron trilogy. That's like kind of like,
that would be cool. I would actually buy that.
That's the final one for me, where I would just be like jumping out of my seat.
Man, I remember playing Rogue Squadron on GameCube, so the second one.
Yeah, dude.
Golly, I remember like thinking at the time, like, this game just looks incredible. Like I remember that was one of the first games.
I think it still looks incredible.
It's kind of like Metroid Prime that way, where it's like you look at it and it's like, damn, this game looks awesome, like considering the age of the game. So yeah, I really like that game as well. I'd be down for that. I'm taking a look at the list of games, and actually, so I should mention too, like, I actually think that this is a pretty solid list of games. It's obviously, I think I speak for a lot of Nintendo Switch owners when I say, like, what I look for, the games that I want on Nintendo Switch are almost exclusively made by Nintendo, right? But that being said, the list of games here is pretty cool. And I do have a few that stick out to me that I would want to check out. First and foremost is Contra. I'm always down for some Contra, so like, let's get that going on. And
Way Forward too. The Shantae developers are doing that.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. And another game that stuck out to me again, that we saw at the Game Awards, which looks like a really, really cool Metroidvania, actually, which you might even see on this show sometime in the future, is Tales of Kanzera, Zao, which looks kind of like Black Panther meets Metroidvania, which looks like pretty sweet. So looking forward to that.
That's a pretty cool description already, right? So
yeah, like it has like a really cool energy, and I remember that game stuck out to me watching the Game Awards, which is saying something because there's like 1,000 million games that all kind of look the same at the Game Awards. So if you're going to stick out there, you're popping, you know what I mean? But I have one game that I'm really interested in, and I'm interested to see what the price is going to be, because I remember when this game came out, and I thought about grabbing it because I thought it looked like kind of cool, and I never did. And that is Epic Mickey. And that sounds kind of like a weird game, but I remember it kind of like piquing my interest back when it came out. It was like this dark, twisted version of like the Mickey Mouse Kingdom, and like, I mean, you know me, I'm not really like a Disney guy, but I don't know, there was something about it that I thought looked cool, and this one kind of, again, like piqued my interest when I saw it. So like, if this was on sale for like a couple bucks, I might go in and see about picking it up.
Yeah, I feel like this game got a lot of mixed reviews. Like, I know some people that adore this game, and I know some people where it just didn't really click, and so, and I'm not really much of a Disney guy in general. Like, I like a lot of Disney films, and like, I mean, Toy Story, Inside Out, those Pixar films, some of my favorite films of all time. Like I don't consider myself a Disney person. You
Right.
know what I mean? I don't go cuckoo for Disney like I do for Nintendo.
Well, I mean, I would say I'm probably even less of a Disney guy. I mean, you take away obviously the animated classics from like our childhood in the early '90s, but like
Hmm.
Disney post that, yeah, I'm not a massive proponent of, but I don't know. There's something about this game that I thought just looked kind of cool. And I guess the other thing that stuck out to me as well, that was officially confirmed, is that one of those Microsoft games is indeed Grounded, which I don't know anything about. I saw that it reviewed
All
kind of okay.
all four of the games actually got confirmed. Two of them are not coming to Switch, at least right now.
Right.
Maybe they get announced for Switch 2 later. But yeah, Pentiment and Grounded are coming to Switch. Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves are coming to PS5.
Which seems like really backwards to me. Like I feel like Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush seems like games that are kind of tailor-made for Switch. And those are the games that I know a little bit about too. I don't know, maybe it's like a hardware thing where they can't run. Maybe they'll find their way to Switch too.
That's probably
Yeah,
my
I don't know.
guess. That's probably my guess. I would Sea of Thieves in particular. I feel like that is like tailor-made for the Switch audience. I
Yeah.
feel like I would be shocked if that didn't come to Switch 2 at least.
We'll have to see, but
So,
solid
and also,
solid direct.
Speaking of rare, we got a huge rare drop of NSO games as well. We got classic Killer Instinct, we got Blast Core,
That
we
is
got
true.
Battletoads, and so that was really, it was funny because I feel like we were just talking about how we haven't gotten like a really good SNES drop in a while, and I feel like Killer Instinct, like I feel like that's a pretty good one at least.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about it last week. When we were talking about Zero Mission, which we're gonna get to, by the way. We're talking about Zero Mission today again, but we were kind of like, God, it feels like there hasn't been a whole lot like on NSO lately. And actually, the biggest takeaway from this to me was that the Game Boy Advance NSO was updated with Mother 3, but only in Japan. That stings. And I gotta say, I don't know what the deal is without like I don't know, like I feel like you could like listen, I understand maybe if you don't want to give it away on NSO, but like for the amount of money that it would take to get this translated, I feel like you could charge like a couple bucks on the eShop and make that back like 100 times. So the game doesn't have that much content that really honestly is like outrageous or anything like that. Like I've played it. I don't think that there's like a big content issue like a lot of people seem to think. And I heard that there was like some music that was unlicensed, and I'm just like, I don't know, can we not just like switch the music? Like, I mean, I'm a schmuck with the Metroid podcast, but that seems like easy enough to me. I don't know.
I haven't played it, so I don't really know what I would do, but I feel like whatever it is, Nintendo doesn't see a financial incentive there, and I think here's the thing: if they can release Star Fox 2, you can do Mother 3. Damn it!
Exactly.
I feel like come on. They even retranslate. What was that NES Fire Emblem game they retranslated and then sold for like 5 days before they like took it off. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but
I can't remember. I think it was the first one.
yeah.
Or maybe it was like Genealogy of the Holy, whatever it was. There's money to be made there. People want to play Earthbound 3. I mean, it's a whole meme. Like people are still taking Reggie Fils-Aimé about this. So like, I don't know, man. Like I just think like we should get it done. Great if you're in Japan. Sucks if you're waiting for this game and you were told that you're still not going to get it. But I will say this for any Earthbound fans out there, there are very, very wicked translated carts that you can run on a DS. They're on Etsy. They're cheap. That's how I got mine, and it was awesome, and it worked perfectly. So, hey, if that's your thing, check it out. All right. That being said, let's talk about Metroid Zero Mission. We are
A different Game Boy Advance game.
a different Game Boy Advance, which also did not show up to NSO, on either North American soil, European soil, or Japanese soil. So maybe one day. But what we do know is that it is still our celebration of the 20th anniversary of Zero Mission. And we thought that we would continue the good times by talking about all of the different bosses that you can fight in this game and ranking them definitive ranking style. So this is what I propose here, and we just did kind of a similar thing on the Zelda cast. I propose we do it like super classic. Let's just have the first two. We'll decide which one goes above the other. Get the third one in there. That can either go 1, 2, or 3. The fourth one, 1, 2, 3, or 4, etc., etc., until we get ourselves one final Mama Jama list all the bosses in this game.
Yep, that's kind of the same thing I was thinking. Sounds
All right.
simple enough to me.
So also, by the way, what we're going to be using for reference here, because I know that there's a little bit of confusion, particularly about like the Kirigirus, if those count as bosses or not. We're going to be using the official Omega Metroid Zero Mission walkthrough as kind of our guidepost to how we're going to rank these bosses. So that being said, and also some of these bosses have like very different names across different translations or whatever. So we'll describe all these bosses to everybody. But let's get it started. Let's start off with the first boss that you see in Zero Mission. This is Diorum, who is the kind of a cool boss, actually. I like this boss. It's really simple. I mean, it's your first boss, as it should be. But this is the worm that kind of, at least I think it's a worm. He like has two like big spikes on either side of the arena, and then a third kind of tentacle with his eyeball, and he'll come down and lash at you and all the things. And this is a really unique boss in the history of Metroid, because this boss actually can run away from you if you don't defeat it fast enough, which I always thought was like kind of cool. And you can find it at a later date. You get the charge beam from it. I don't know, a very, very kind of a unique boss. It looks like a very Castlevania type of boss to me, not like a Metroid-y type of boss. But I don't know, for what this boss is, I think it's kind of cool. Like, again, it's super, super easy. I think you only need like 3 missiles in order to defeat it, but I kind of like it.
Yeah, I feel like it goes almost without saying that like most of the bosses in Zero Mission, if not all of the bosses. Actually, I'm not gonna say all. There's one I'll get to later, specifically on hard mode. But yeah, bosses are pretty easy, so I'm not really gonna factor that too much into how I rank them individually. That's more so on a game by game basis. But yeah, I like you said, I really like this boss. It's super unique. I love how it like really entraps you and makes you feel that kind of classic claustrophobicness of Metroid, which I actually think, as much as I prefer Zero Mission to NES, I don't think Zero Mission fully captures that claustrophobia like NES Troid does, except in this boss fight. I think this boss fight does a really good job of that. And like you mentioned, it's so unique because, you know, not just the fact that it can run away, but on top of that, because it can run away, I think it's the first unintentional boss that you can technically skip. Like there's like obviously like Super Metroid, NES Troid, you can glitch past bosses and do stuff like that. But that's not intended. The game wants you to fight all of these bosses. This is one where you could go through the whole game without defeating this thing, and
which would suck because you don't have the charge beam.
Yeah, I mean, for a low percent run, I mean, you might want to do that, but otherwise, yeah, definitely not optimal. And overall, it's really unique. I kind of like the music that plays with it too, but yeah, otherwise, not much else to add.
I think that the sprite work in particular looks like really cool, particularly like the eye. Actually, that's a thing that Zero Mission I think does like consistently well, is all of these enemies just have like these really kind of gross eyeball, like oozy weak points on them, and I think that Diorum maybe is the epitome of that, because his eye just looks nasty. So I think that the sprite work is great. I personally, you know, the music is kind of what it is for me, but yeah, there's just like something cool about this fight, and it's different. Now, again, this isn't going to be towards the top of my list when it's all said and done, but I think for like an intro boss, it's pretty cool. And like the thing about that too is like this really is an intro boss. Like there are a lot of Metroid games where you don't fight your first boss for like a decent amount of time into the game. Like I'm thinking like technically Metroid Prime, like Flagra's your first boss, and a couple others like that you really have to wait a long time for, like Samus Returns. But this is a boss that kind of eases you right into the action. So in that regard, I think it does do a really good job doing that. I would, well, I guess let's talk about the second boss, and then we can decide if it's going to go above or behind this other boss. So let's go on. Let's talk about the Acid Worm. And this is a cool boss, I think. Again, pretty easy, but like it just has a simple gimmick that I really like, and I think is quite effective. So Quinn, this is the I believe you fight this guy in Kraid's lair. You go in and he's a big worm. He kind of actually looks like Dioram a little bit, but you're over a pool of acid. You got platforms on either side, almost like Battlefield from Smash Bros. Except there's no platform in the middle, and you've got a zip line that takes you across the top. So the general gist of it is you lure in the acid worm, and just as it's getting ready to bite you and strike, you go across the zip line. And the acid worm will then bite the platform. It gets stuck, and wouldn't you know, that lines up exactly with your missiles in its weak spot. So you can hammer away at it and send it back to whence it came. Again, really easy, really simple, but there's something satisfying I feel like about this boss and like kind of using that zip line. I personally put it above Dioram, but not by much. What are your thoughts on this boss, Doom, and where would you rank it according to what we got going on?
Yeah, I think I agree with pretty much all of that. I think overall, like, Dioram has a cooler design and, just a more unique aspect of it in that you can skip it. But in terms of the actual fight itself, I think there's a little bit more going on with the acid worm fight that makes it, just more engaging to fight with.
Mm-hmm.
And again, and much like you, I'm a sucker for zip lines and anything like that. And so incorporating that into a boss fight, even if it's like really simple, just going from one side of the arena to the other, even something as simple as that, I just really enjoy. And I also like that, well, on your first time, yeah, it's a very easy fight. At the same time, if it's your first time playing and you're not quite used to Zero Mission's combat, it can be very punishing you because it can drag you into the acid as well, and that will quite literally eat away at your suit in a way that the Dioram fight doesn't really punish you in that regard. It's more like Dioram is more like testing like how quick you can defeat a boss, whereas the acid worm I think is the first one that really tests your endurance as a player. So overall, I think I pretty much agree with everything you said. I would put it just above Dioram.
By the way, you saying Dioram like that feels like how it should be said. I don't know why the hell I was saying Dioram before, but I'm gonna start saying Dioram now. But yeah, like I think that it's like a satisfying boss fight. Just gives you a little bit more interactivity, which I feel like leads to a more enjoyable time for me, at least, anyways. So yeah, I think that this one, like, again, I would say that these first two bosses are kind of like two sides of the same coin, where like I don't know that they're going to end up super, super high when it's all said and done, but as intro bosses, pretty cool. So yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about someone that we talked about a couple weeks ago, which is Big Daddy Kraid. I had a lot of great response to that Kraid episode, by the way. People were stoked that we did a whole show about Kraid.
Oh yeah, it was a long time coming. We had to do it eventually,
Yeah.
Give our boy some love.
We did a lot of shows about Ridley, but it was finally Kraid's time in the sun. So the first thing we got to mention is, the first thing that I should mention is I beat up on this fight on our Kraid ranking, and I stand by that. However, what I want to say is that in the context of the bosses in Zero Mission, I think that this is like a pretty good fight. Again, not like the top tier. But like, I kind of hinted at this last week, and I'll expand on it as the show goes on, and maybe once we are finished and recap everything. But I don't know if there's any like one boss in Zero Mission that like really blows me away. So I think like most of these guys are like somewhere kind of in the same murky middle to me, if you put a gun to my head. But the Kraid fight definitely has a little something going for it. I first of all, the sprite work is unbelievable. This is such a good look for Kraid, and those cutscenes, super, super awesome. Particularly like the sprite work of Kraid with like the third eyeball on his head looks like super awesome. However, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, this is the Super Metroid fight, just not as fun, I don't think. So I had a little bit of a hard time actually coming up on where to rank this fight. Before I keep going here, Doom, I'd like to hear your thoughts, because I can be influenced on where to put this.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'll have much influence, because again, I pretty much agree with everything you said, especially when it comes to Zero Mission boss fights. The way I would sum up Zero Mission is there's no bosses that I dread, but there's no bosses that like get me like pumped up, like, oh yeah, baby, it's time to, there's no like, oh, it's time to face Quadraxis, it's time to face Ravenbeak, it's time to face Thordis or Metroid. Like there's no boss that really gets me on that level, but there's also no like, Oh God, it's time to face Maganar. Oh God,
Yeah.
there's nothing. There's nothing in Zero Mission where it's like that. Like it all, like it's a very mild roller coaster where there's no extreme dips, but there's no extreme peaks either.
I would agree with
It's
that.
very it's
It's the
yeah,
kids' roller
and I feel
coaster.
like yes, it's a kiddie coaster exactly, and I think Kraid is say the epitome of this in the game. That's the next of the two guys probably, but I think Kraid is definitely contributes that to it. One thing I also will mention from the Kraid episode is while again 100% agree, it's just boneless Super Metroid fight. At the same time though, there is a fun satisfaction to it once you do
Yes.
fully optimize that fight. Being able to take out Kraid in like 4 seconds and like perfectly timing your jump so that you're perfectly level with his mouth and you're just nailing all those weak points. There's like a big satisfaction being able to get all that done in like a matter of seconds.
I
That being said,
do
though,
I do like that the platforms themselves like kind of give away over time, but I wish that they just weren't even there to begin with. I think it would have been more satisfying if you just started on the bottom and then had to like you kind of like in Dread where you have to climb your way up to to hit him.
that being said, I think I wouldn't mind putting it over Acid Worm, but honestly, I might even put Acid Worm over Kraid if I'm being honest.
Ooh. Oh, okay. So I actually did a list. Usually when we do shows like this, I don't make a list beforehand because I want to I want to let other people's opinions kind of influence me on what I can do. I did make a list this time, and I don't think in good conscience I can put Kraid below Acid Worm or Diorum. And I'll tell you why. Like the fight itself is kind of like okay, like we've been here before, we've done this before. It's a nice song and dance. But again, like I kind of come back to it's like, well, like you're fighting Kraid. Like Kraid is awesome. Like I like Kraid. He's a series staple, and he means more to me. Even if the fight is kind of repetitive and easy, Kraid means more to me than beating up on the Acid Worm or Diorum. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so like it's kind of our curse, I think, doing the show though, because like you're right. Like you could like say to me that like my fourth overall boss should be in last place, and like that wouldn't necessarily offend me. It's just kind of like, yeah, okay, I can see that. Like there's not a world of
Well,
difference,
again,
you know?
I'm not like super like tied to this. Like again,
Right? Yeah.
I'm totally fine with putting Kraid above. I'm just saying like for me personally, like I'm not even saying guaranteed. I'm just saying I might even put Acid Worm over Kraid. You know what I mean?
I do, yeah. Well, like, and you're not wrong, right? Because like I said, like all of these bosses almost exist on like the same tier ranking, like almost right beside each other. So it's like, which one should we put? It probably doesn't matter in the end. I would say this. I would put it above the Acid Worm and Diorum, and we'll see what else comes after that. I don't know. There's definitely going to be some bosses I would put above Kraid, but I guess like at the end of the day too, it's just like I don't know. It's Kraid. Even a
Yeah,
bad Kraid fight it's still pretty fun, and it's still pretty cool to see our guy.
that is true.
I say that now, and you can please feel free to throw those words back in my face in a little bit as we as we go down this list. All right, let's talk about this one. This is a weird battle. This is Kirugiru, and so we've decided to separate Kirugiru and his fully grown brother, which we'll talk about in a second here. So specifically the Kirugiru ensnared fight. This is like barely a boss fight, but it still kind of counts as one. I mean, there's really not much. It's like it's a worse version of Spore Spawn, where nothing really happens. You basically have to freeze a Ripper, jump up, destroy the tentacles, and I think there's some stuff that floats around the arena that can damage you.
Even plays the Spore Spawn music.
Yeah. There's really not much going on in this battle to be to be totally honest. It's kind of it's a little bit of a stinker. I will say that I think that the sprite work though looks super awesome, and the ensnared Kiru itself looks super cool. And maybe if we want to give this boss like a little bit of shine, we could also include, because there's a couple of these Kira gears as well. There's one in particular that you need to use the wave beam when you get it in order to like shoot through a wall, and you push it back and then you drop your bombs. Like that's like fun enough. Like it's more of an environmental hazard, obviously, than a boss. But...
I wouldn't really count those two as boss fights. I feel like the ensnared fight is like at least a mini boss fight. So okay. I would count that. I agree with you. I wouldn't go as far as to call it a stinker, but I definitely would put it like again on the lower. Because again, I don't think there's a bad boss fight in Zero Mission. But again, I'd probably put this on the lower end. It's less of a fight and more of an obstacle. I think that's how I would summarize the fight. Well, overall, I will say though, you mentioned the sprite work. I really like the again, I like that recurring of the spore spawn theme.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the atmosphere of this fight. But the fight itself, like again, there isn't really too much to it.
Yeah, there's really not. And the unfortunate thing too is like you don't get a payoff to the fight either. Like you literally beat Kiru and it falls, and I guess your payoff is you get access to Ridley's lair. But kind of as we've talked about before, like if you've done like a super missile sequence break, which is super easy to do, you have access to Ridley's lair anyways. So like for me, the way that I play Zero Mission, it's just kind of like a this is a boss that's going to take me a few seconds. I would put it right at the bottom, to be honest, and I would keep it there.
I agree. One other thing I will mention, and doesn't really factor in anymore. It was more of a first time thing, and I'm not even sure if I would include this in the boss fight itself, since it's post boss fight. But I kind of love the sequence of like navigating Ridley's lair up until the Imago fight, where you don't know where to go, and then you're in Ridley's lair, you see the Kirugiro starting to hatch, and then you go back up and you see it actually dug a hole and you find that new path. That whole sequence your first time, I thought that was really cool. Obviously, it's not a surprise anymore, and I know exactly how to do it now, but I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I would agree. So like maybe Stinker was too harsh. Like there is a lot of cool stuff. Like the music is cool, the sprite work is cool. Some of the ideas here are cool. It's just like it's very basic, very simple, even by Zero Mission standards, which is fairly basic game in terms of like boss battles. This one is really basic and really easy to do. So yeah, I would personally have it right at the bottom, and I don't anticipate it moving up unless you really have something that you hate. All right. Well, let's talk about what hatches from old Giru here. And this is actually one of the better bosses in the game, I think. I had it ranked kind of high, and I might suggest that on our current ranking right now, it should go in number 1. And that is, I believe how you say it is Imago. For everybody that doesn't know, Imago, which sounds a lot like Iago, speaking of Disney, sounds like the parrot from Aladdin. So Imago is the like fly. What is that? Is this supposed to be a fly or like a bee or some kind of insect that comes up from the cocoon that Kirugira was in? And this is a neat boss battle, and where you're supposed to get your first super missile. But I think like one of the cool things about this boss battle is like it's kind of in like a weird kind of arena, because on the left you start off at the top and then it slopes downwards as you make your way over to the right, which can be like kind of cool if you can lure Imago into a nice little pattern, because the arena itself is pretty big and Imago will kind of fly circles around. But I think it's like really satisfying when you kind of wait all the way at the top of the room on the left-hand side. Imago comes over, you get into Morph Ball, he flies right past you, and you're like, all right, it's time to feast. You get up, you start hammering Imago with super missiles. He's flying fast, but your speed boost kicks in, and it's just like, you ain't going nowhere, and you're just like peppering this guy with super missiles right to his bug butt, that little stinger that he has. I think it's like very, very satisfying to do that, and again, like, it's kind of cool because like this is another boss fight which is really easy, as most of these boss fights are, but there's just something really satisfying about the way that you can like lure Imago into your trap and pound him with missiles and ideally not even take like a lick of damage. I like this.
I think it's fine.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't really disagree with anything you've said again, but like I don't know if I get the same. I don't know if I get that same level of satisfaction
Mm.
with this boss that you do. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I think for me is I wish the speed booster actually played a little bit more of a role. Maybe not in the main fight itself, but more in like, sequence breaking the fight or like,
Mm-hmm.
alternate weak points. Cause like yeah, you can kind of catch up to it with the speed booster, but it doesn't really do a whole lot. And I feel like something like, where it's like constantly rushing between the two sides of the arena. I feel like there's a really fun opportunity to do something like that, or even maybe like kind of like a Z57 quick kill type of
Yeah.
scenario where you can like shine spark, but you can't really do that, and so I feel like that's the thing that's really missing to really like put this fight at like the top position like you would.
Right.
For where I stand right now, I would probably put it just I would probably put it just over Kiriguru and but before the charge beam worm. Dioram, yeah. Forgot
Wow.
the name for a moment. Yeah.
That's low. Holy moly, that's low.
Well, again, remember, I don't dislike any of the bosses in Zero Mission. Keep that in mind. But
Right.
yes, it is
So
going at the bottom of my current list.
I ranked it at number 4. To back up for a second here, I don't disagree with anything you said. Like I think that that's all valid. This fight could be great. Like I think it's satisfying, but it's certainly missing something to make it a little bit more engaging. Particularly like some sort of challenge, like maybe the arena could have like dipped and had peaks on both sides, and that would have made it a little bit more frantic, or just maybe have a smaller arena, because it does feel like you do spend a lot of your time waiting for Imago to come back. I can't really disagree with anything that you're saying. Like my ranking of it just gives me a nice little satisfaction when I can hit all that. So I don't know that necessarily makes up for a great boss fight necessarily, but I would still have a hard time ranking it like almost dead last. I would push. How about this? I would push for it to go below Kraid and maybe above our boy Acid Worm. That's what I would push for.
I would still push at least for Acid Worm to go above it. but
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what. I mean, that's
if we
literally
if we
meeting in
can't
the
do it,
middle.
if we can't do it though, I'm fine with compromising there though.
No, no, like having it in between Dioram and Acid Worm is literally meeting in the middle, because you would have it second to last. I'd have it second. Well, I'd probably actually put it first on mine, but I'm okay making that kind of compromise, because I don't know if I'm going to be asking you for a favor later or not, because I think we might agree on this boss, but we'll get there in a little bit. Yeah, I again, like I think it's a cool fight, but I don't feel passionate enough to really stick up for it and really, like, you know what I mean, like defend it. If you're like middle of the pack, it's like, yeah, okay, that's fine. Which I guess, by the way, we should recap our list so far. So in number 5 we have Kirugiru. In number 4, Dioram. Number 3, now we just slotted in Imago, and then in number 2 we have Acid Worm, and leading the pack so far is our boy Big Daddy Kraid in the number 1 spot. Let's see if he can stay there, and let's get over to our next fight, which is a showdown with the cunning god of death, the leader of the space pirates. It's Ridley, and again, great sprite work. I love the sprite work of Ridley in the cutscenes, and like Ridley, his sprite here looks awesome. It looks so good. This sprite looks absolutely incredible. Maybe the best Ridley sprite in the series. Although I do kind of wish that he was like more purple right away. You know what I mean, or red, or like something like that.
I definitely prefer the grayer look of Ridley here. I really think
Okay.
it fits. Yeah.
Um,
I noticed you're really emphasizing that sprite work and not talking about anything else, though, Andy. Would you care to elaborate on that fight?
yeah, you know what? Like I think this fight stinks. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I do. In like, listen, like I don't have a problem with like an easier go at Ridley. And actually, an example is like the Ridley X fight in Metroid Fusion. I used to like really not care for that fight at all, and it's still not my favorite Ridley fight. But I've actually kind of grown to appreciate it a little bit, because it's different. It's a little bit unique. There are some, like, the sprite work looks unique. There's just some like unique things going on in that fight. This, to me, once again, sprite work aside, just like with Kraid, is just like a much lesser version of the Super Metroid fight. And like I get it, like it's a portable game, but we're also in the era where like SNES games were being ported to the Game Boy Advance. So I just feel like you can't tell me that this couldn't have been a more engaging fight, or like some other stuff couldn't have been added. It feels like there's nothing new. It feels like and Ridley is just like, it's so easy. Like, it's so easy that kind of bugs me as well. You know, it has all the classic Ridley trappings there, the tail, the pogo, all of that kind of stuff, but there's something about this fight that it just doesn't do it for me. Like, I think it's actually maybe the worst Ridley fight in the series, maybe except for Other M, but even that, like, the actual fight itself was kind of okay. The fight here, and I know the people are probably going to hate this, but I really don't like this fight.
Oh, I 100% agree. This is in dead last in my list, in my whole list, not just
okay.
for what we have so far. And again, I think in a bubble, it's fine. I don't dislike it. I think it's fine. But let's be honest, our standards for Ridley fights, I think it's fair to say they are and should be higher. Like, it's a Ridley
Yes.
fight, you know?
Yes.
And yeah, it just does not deliver in that regard. And even Kraid, while I think that Kraid fight is easy, you know, being able to optimize, you know, being able to time those jumps just right so that you're at mouth height. Like, there is a rhythm, and there is a groove to that. With Ridley, you literally just aim diagonal and spam missiles, and he's dead in like 5 seconds, and that's all there is to the fight. It's just yeah. So like, yeah, I like the
Yeah.
atmosphere. Again, the sprite work is gorgeous. I even enjoy the music too, but the fight itself, it's just it honestly, there are many bosses in this game that give a greater challenge than this major fight right here, and that's pretty disappointing.
Yeah, like on one hand, I'm about to defend it, but on the other hand, I'm just like, I don't even really enjoy the atmosphere of this fight. Like you when you go up to Ridley, like when you go up to that Ridley boss fight in Super Metroid, my God, it feels like such an intense, like the music is pounding, you see all this like statue work everywhere. It's really cool. And even in Nestroid, like I feel like when you go up to Ridley's lair in Nestroid is like this amazing area full of like really tough enemies, this like sinister music. And I mean, that fight kind of is what it is, but like, you know, we're also, I'm giving it some leeway because it's so old. This one, I just kind of feel like I don't know, it's just kind of like, but on the same hand, I do want to stick up for it a little bit, because I'm in good conscience, I can't allow this to be ranked lower than like Kirugiro. I can't do that. While our expectations should be higher for a Ridley fight, I can't sit here and tell everybody and you and everybody listening that I think that this is a worse fight than Kirugiro, or probably, to be honest, Diorum and Acid Worm as well. On my personal list, I had this in number 6 above those 3 bosses. I'd be willing to make some concessions. Kirugiro is one that sticks out to me. That's where I'll draw a hard line. I can't rank this lower than that, but
that's fine. You know me, I do like to be edgy with my picks and be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make the decision that no one else has the guts. So I'm totally fine with making that compromise, you know.
So yeah, let's put him above Kiru. Like I guess I wonder, like, do you think this is like a controversial decision? Like is this is not a beloved Ridley fight, right? Among fans?
I don't think it's I don't think so. I feel like our Meta Ridley, because I know none of us are like big fans of like the Prime Meta Ridley fight, and so I feel like that is definitely a bigger controversial pick. I feel like this one is pretty like, I don't think there's anyone that's like going to bat for this being like the Ridley fight.
Right, I would agree with that as well. And if someone were to argue with me, like Dak does all the time, right? Like he's like, I love the Meta Ridley fight for this, and this, and it's like, yeah, that makes sense. I don't like agree, but like, yeah, I get it. I don't know. It's just like, ugh. Like I'm looking at my walkthrough that you and I contributed to, and like I'm like, this can't be right. 6 direct shots with super missiles will put Ridley on the brink of death. What? Like in Super Metroid, you need to, like, if you have full missiles, you're using like 50 supers, you're using like 250 regular missiles, and he still might not be dead after that. You might have to pound him with your charge beam, and which I'm not advocating that you should have that many like missiles to use on a Ridley fight, but like if you're just gonna have like the same style of fight as Super Metroid, where it's like, listen, there's no weak spot. You hit him, he hits you, who dies first? And I love that style of fight, but like if you're gonna do that, you can't make the guy a wimp. Like he has to have some mustard to him, and this Ridley, he's a wimp. I'm sorry.
I don't even like mustard, and I agree with that.
Yeah, you know what? Mustard is okay. It's I'll take it. You know, maybe if I need it, but like there are some people out there that are like they have their favorite types of mustard, like Dijon and stuff, and I'm just like, I don't know, not for me. Okay, let's move on to another boss fight. And again,
Actually, did we like get a ranking for Ridley? Because I don't think we officially did that yet.
Yeah, sorry, we did. I might have skipped over too fast though. So my compromise is this: I am willing to rank Ridley second last above Kirugiru.
I would even be fine with putting him up one more over too, just as
you know
the
what?
one that
okay.
I'm not willing. The one that I'm not willing to compromise again is Acid Worm. I don't know. I feel like I have a big attachment to Acid Worm for these, in terms of like these first half bosses,
Well, I'll tell you what then. Let's put Ridley at number 4 on our list. So Ridley is above Dioram and Kirugiru. And I had Ridley below Imago on my list too, so I feel like that's fine, so we can keep him there.
Okay.
And then Acid Worm at 2, and then Kraid at 1. I think that's okay.
Sounds good.
I am going to suggest that we crown a new number 1 on our list, though, for the next boss fight. Again,
Hell yeah.
This isn't like the world's toughest boss fight or anything, but there's something glorious, I feel like, about this Mother Brain fight. Like, it's just... The sprite work really pops. I feel like the Mother Brain sprite in particular looks awesome. The eyeball that they added looks awesome. There's just something about going through that classic fight one more time in a different kind of setting. Like it's less... Super Metroid is like more moody and atmospheric, I feel like, whereas this is kind of like more bright and colorful. But I really like it. Like, that's not a diss. There's just something classic about this Mother Brain fight. I think the music is cool. Again, Mother Brain sprite looks awesome. It's got that big gross eye that we see on Dioram. Not much to the fight, but like, considering the rest of what we're working with in this game, I'm not gonna lie to you, I ranked this number 1 because I was like, I don't know what else to put at number 1. So I had this quite high on my list. There's something just very like pleasing to me about this fight.
Yeah, this fight is okay. No, of course, this is my number 1 also. Yeah, no duh. This is such a great fight. I love it. This is actually one of the few bosses that I would actually rank as, like, kind of difficult. Like, obviously by Zero Mission standards, but even apart from that, on hard mode, when I was, I think back in 2020, when I played this game for the first time in ages, like, this was the one part where I actually died on. And yeah, this fight actually, like, if you just kind of go in guns blazing without, like, a plan, or you haven't really, fully adjusted to the movement, like, it's a really easy boss to underestimate, but it can mess your stuff up. And I almost said something very different. But, yeah, point is, and then, again, like you mentioned, the sprite work. I love the sound design of this boss, too. I love that, the foley that it plays when it's charged. Well, the glass too, but I was going to, like, when it's charging its eye laser, the whirring, like that thing, like, oh man, I absolutely love that thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously the NES version is, tougher, but yeah, I feel like, with Zero Mission and like all the new tools you're given in this game, and the easier movement, like, I feel like it's a really nice compromise between that original NES difficulty and kind of like these modern quality of life changes.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I don't know, like again, it's not the most difficult fight, but it is difficult for Zero Mission, and you do, like, it's probably appropriate because I feel like far and away the best boss fight of Metroid is Mother Brain, which makes sense that this is also the best boss fight, and it's really more of like an obstacle fight where, like, you just you have stuff coming at you in the environment. But I like that Mother Brain kind of punches back a little bit in this one too with the eye laser. You're right, the sound design looks cool. Just the sprite work just looks so awesome in this game. But with this fight in particular,
this is my favorite. I think this is my favorite Mother Brain design. Honestly, like, she looks awesome here.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, I love the Super Metroid design, but, like, just in terms of, like, sprite work itself for, like, Mother Brain, like the spikes, the eyeball. We should also mention too, it's not part of the boss fight, but like the cutscene earlier where where you see the eye and opening up and it's like is always awesome. And I guess too, like, one thing that again, it's not part of the boss fight, but I do think it adds to the atmosphere. Is like, going through Torian and slowly eliminating all the Metroids. I feel like that definitely adds to this fight. So yeah, honestly, I had this at number one on my list.
Yeah, it's definitely number one for me right now.
Okay.
There's another boss that I'm debating whether or not a future boss will dethrone it or not. But honestly, I'm not even sure. This could be my overall number one for all I know. I'm just kind of winging it right now.
I had kind of a similar thing where I was like, is this my favorite boss from the game? Probably, but there's also another one. But is that the best boss in the game? I don't know, because it's so weird, and I'm assuming we're probably talking about this, or maybe we're not talking about the same thing. I don't know. So let's move on.
I mean, I mentioned it last week, so
I think you did. I think we're going to the same place here. Let's go to the Chozo Test. This is a weird boss fight, but I really like it. Really
Same
like
here.
it. And it's a boss fight unlike anything else, and I think it really works, and it fits very thematically well with like the whole like Zero Mission section of that game, where you're doing unorthodox things that you wouldn't normally do in a Metroid game. So I like that there's like this weird kind of spiritual boss that instead of a monster that you need to overcome, it's like Samus herself that you need to overcome. And I kind of like, again, that it's like it's positioned as like a Chozo test, and it's not a boss itself. It's a weird fight. So, and the idea here is that Zero Suit Samus is in the middle, and there's this Chozo ghost that kind of has Zero Suit Samus and flies around the screen, and basically you have to wait for the opportune moment to shoot yourself, where it's the Chozo symbol and not Zero Suit Samus, which is like easy enough actually, but it definitely ramps up in difficulty once you kind of get like 3 of the orbs in place, and there's like lightning bolts that are shooting down, and the thing is moving around like crazy. I've actually played some ROM hacks of Zero Mission where like this fight was bonkers. It was so difficult, like insanely difficult. I wouldn't say that this one is necessarily, but I think the vibe is super awesome. The hieroglyphics in the background look super awesome. I love the idea behind it. It's unique. The Chozo Ghost is always going to get a pop from me. So I am like quite high on this boss fight actually. I have it ranked at number 2, just behind Mother Brain.
Yeah. So I guess I'm gonna talk myself and see where I come out at the end. But yeah, much like you, I freaking love this fight. You were mentioning earlier how Diorm gave you Castlevania vibes. This fight for me, this is the Castlevania fight. Everything about it, just from the boss itself and the way it attacks you, to like this this organ music, which is something I would never associate with Metroid. But in this one specific context, I think they make it work really well. It's like it's like so creepy and ethereal, and it matches like all the weirdness that's going on with this fight. I much like Mother Brain, I love how it can be very deceptive, because like at first, like it's easy enough at first, and then you get to that last one where it's like all of a sudden like that hieroglyphic, it's like there for like maybe a second at most, and you gotta be quick to get to it, and if you don't, like you're waiting for a while for it, and like anytime it touches you, I think it's like on hard mode, I think that's like a full tank of damage. And so like it's a really I think it's like a really fun test of your movement abilities, which I think Zero Mission is some of the best movement in the series, so I'm always a big fan of that.
That lightning too, by the way, when it hits, it can go across the floor and like up the walls. Like you got to be on it in this fight.
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm doing it. I think I'm putting it over Mother Brain. I think I've talked myself into it. I love how creative and unique the whole thing is. That being said, I totally understand why you have Mother Brain at number 1 as well.
You know what? I'm gonna push to keep Mother Brain at number 1. I feel like it's just like, I feel like it's like Nestroid, the realized the way it should be. So like I feel like it's appropriate to have Mother Brain at number 1. So I'm gonna push for that. But I would say that this is a very strong number 2, and also because I feel like, not that this matters in our list, of course, but like I do feel like this is kind of a divisive boss fight amongst the community. And I feel like the Mother Brain fight, easy as it is kind of a beloved fight, or maybe not beloved, but like it's generally regarded very well. So that's my rationale for keeping Mother Brain at number 1 ahead of the Chozo Test. I could be swayed differently, but yeah, I would say like I really love this boss fight. I really honestly like anytime that there's something different, that always kind of appeals to me a little bit more. So this is a really good example of Zero Mission. Like I think Zero Mission is at its best when it's different, which is funny because it's a remake, but like I really think that that's the truth, and this is a great testament to that. So I'm gonna push for it for number 2 versus number 1, but for me at least, there's a big gap between number 2 and then number 3 and the rest of the list.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, I'm totally fine with keeping Mother Braid at number 1.
Okay.
But yeah, pretty much everything about this fight. I love that it's kind of this love letter to Castlevania. I love that there's like story significance to the boss, which Zero Mission isn't really a story heavy game, but you have a little bit of like a little bit of a lore drop there, which I really like. And it's unique, but it's not just different for the sake of being different. Like it like fits into like this entire gameplay section. It really like feels like the climactic finale to this whole Zero Mission segment. And when you do get fully powered, like it feels earned so much.
It's great. It's a great moment.
Yeah, well, like we were talking about stuff like like Ridley earlier, and like you defeat Ridley, and it's like that didn't feel earned. Like that feel like I feel like Ridley was kind of playing me there, but this like I feel like I earned all that back.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Particularly contrasting it with Ridley, it feels like you're fighting Kirugiru wearing a Ridley mask. You know what I mean? This one is tough. So I love everything you said. I agree with you 100%. Let's finish it off. Let's go to the last boss here. I wasn't quite sure what to make of this boss. Because I have two trains of thought regarding Mecha Ridley here. The first train is that I remember playing Zero Mission for the first time and just being like, this is so cool that I'm fighting Mecha Ridley. Like this whole extra part of the game, as we were talking about last week, like this, to me, I was like, wow, this is so sick. This ties in like Ridley with Meta Ridley and Metroid Prime. Like this is so awesome. And I think that like the sprite work of Mecha Ridley is amazing. I love that he has like the missile attacks from Fusion that Box had. Like everything about this fight, like presentation wise, I really love it. And honestly, even like as the fight goes on, like Mecha Ridley takes damage, the damage sprite work looks super cool. I love the way that it sounds like he's slowly creaking and crawling, and he sounds like he's about to fall apart. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, this is a pathetically easy boss, even by Zero Mission standards. Like at this point of the game, like you're fully maxed out. Like you're good to go. You have all the abilities. You can basically just screw attack and space jump in the corner and stay there while Mecha Ridley does his thing, and then just hit him with missiles, and like this guy's toast. And I think it only takes like a handful of super missiles to break the glass shielding around his heart, and then another handful to finish him off. It's really easy. Like in fact, those two gray space pirates that you fight right at Samus's ship, those are like significantly more challenging than this guy.
Oh yeah.
So that's my school of thought.
So at the very least, I'm definitely ranking it higher than the base Ridley fight. I think that goes without saying. But yeah, like you, I'm kind of puzzled where exactly I want to fit in this fight, because like I agree it's easy, but I also think it's kind of engaging.
Mm-hmm.
I like I like the atmosphere. Honestly, I feel like the escape sequence is the best part of the fight. I love Zero Mission's final escape sequence. But like the fight itself, there is the little bit where if you get 100% items, you get an even harder version of the boss, separate from like the actual difficulty mode.
Is that true?
I think that's kind of cool, but
I had no idea about that.
At the same time, yeah. If you get 100% items, like I think he gets like double health or something like that. But
okay,
I don't know what the exact modifier is. So like it's kind of cool, but also like I don't think that's enough of an incentive. I think like he should have like some different attacks at least that are like more difficult to dodge. I feel like that would be like a better reward in that kind of domain.
Honestly speaking, I think even if the escape sequence started and you're fighting Mecha Ridley, that would add some more urgency to this battle.
That would actually be a really good idea. Yeah. Metroid doesn't really do that a lot. The only game I can really think of The only game I can really think of that does that is AM2R, where you fight that mini boss like on your way out of the tower.
Yeah, Echoes does that actually when you're fighting Dark Samus at the
Yep,
end.
yep, Dark Samus too, yeah, which I really like.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else does that. So, I mean, I guess technically the Omega Metroid Infusion, but I mean, like that's kind of whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
I would suggest this. I think that Mecha Ridley reminds me a lot of Kraid, the boss Kraid in this game. And I think like again, like I'm kind of looking at all of these bosses, and for me, I would say Kirugiro is the exception because I think that Kirugiro is probably like the worst boss on this list. But looking at everything from Mecha Ridley to Imago to Kraid to Ridley to Acid Worm Diorum, those guys kind of like all exist in a very similar bracket to me, like very indistinguishable from one another in terms of boss fights. So I might suggest this. I think that for the surprise factor of Mecha Ridley, there's that I thought it was cool, the sprite work, everything like that, and that I don't know, it is kind of a neat tie to the Prime games. That's enough for me to put it above the rest of the pack, but like significantly worse off than like the Chozo Test and Mother Brain. So me personally, I'm taking a look at our list right now. I'd probably slot it in at number 3. If you wanted to push back against that, I would understand though.
I'm fine with that. I won't push too hard against that. One last thing that I'll mention, and this doesn't really change my ranking, but you mentioned how over time when it gets damaged it like becomes more and more red, and I do think that looks cool. At the same time though, I kind of prefer how fusion makes damage appear by actually like as like you're fighting Nightmare and like it actually starts falling apart and revealing its face. You fight bots and like the machine actually starts crumbling. I kind of wish they did something similar with Mecha Ridley, but maybe they just didn't have enough time to like do that many detailed sprites, and so they went with the recolor instead. Which again, I still think the recolors look great. I think Red Mecha Ridley looks awesome.
No,
but,
you're right though. It does look cool, but that would have been awesome if like even you kind of see that in the Mother Brain fight. I mean, to a very limited extent, of course, but like that glass shattering, and that's pretty satisfying and like a nice little crunch when you're playing. That would have been cool to see if you could like pick off some parts of Mecha Ridley or something like that. So yeah, like I mean, I guess so. I'll read our list here, and then let's talk about the bosses, just generally speaking. So coming in dead last, no surprise here, we got poor Kirugiro. At number 8, we have Diorum. Number 7, we've got Ridley. Tough look, buddy. Number 6, Imago. Number 5, the Acid Worm. Number 4 is Kraid. Number 3 is Mecha Ridley. Is that Redemption? Are they the same thing? I don't really know. But number 2, we got the Chozo Test. And number 1, we got Mother Brain. So like I kind of alluded to last week, bosses I don't think are a Zero Mission strong suit. I think Metroid Fusion, that's like a really strong part of that game. I would say the same about Metroid Dread. Can't say the same about bosses in this game. They're all fine. They're all acceptable. It's not like there's like any like really, really bad ones, but I think among 2D Metroid, maybe Return of Samus and maybe Nestroid aside, this is like certainly the worst.
Yep. Totally agree. And even Samus Returns, I would say, has stronger boss fight. Definitely a stronger Ridley fight, at least.
I think Samus Returns, I mean, like I wouldn't put that above like Fusion or Super or Dread, but like the boss fights that are in Samus Returns are awesome. And if you wanted to count Omega Metroids as boss fights too, I think you probably could, and those are also awesome as well. This one,
I think even the Zetas are pretty good boss fights.
Yeah, they are actually. Which again kind of proves our point. Like I feel like, and what I just said, like Nestroid and Return of Samus, like if you're on the fence about if this game has better bosses than those games, which are like the oldest in the series and more than 30 years old, like that's probably not good. But yeah, I just feel like it's ironic because we're celebrating Metroid Zero Mission for its 20th, but it doesn't have any wonderful bosses, unfortunately. But it also doesn't have any complete stinkers either, which is kind of nice, I guess. So it all
and as I
mentioned
last week, what's nice is like, I I feel like the biggest reason a lot of these suck is because, or not maybe not suck, but a lot disappointing. They don't live up to their full potential is because of how quick you can defeat them. On the flip side, they don't overstay their welcome. So, if a boss, doesn't really live up to its potential, like you're done in like a matter of seconds if you know how to fully optimize it. Which I think is like at least some redeeming factor.
I completely agree. Honestly, even if you don't know how to fully optimize it, like I mean, like these are pretty easy bosses, like Ridley specifically. But I mean, nobody is going to confuse any boss fights here for like the Ridley fight in Super Metroid or Quadraxis or anything like that. But I think that's okay. Like you're very correct when you say like they don't overstay their welcome. None of them do, which is a big redeeming factor. And if we were ranking these on like a scale of 1 to 5, they'd probably mostly be like 2s, 3s, something like that. Which I think is like fine enough. Like as long as they're not actively bad, that's good enough for me.
Yeah. But and also by that same metric, I don't think I'd give any of these a 5. Like I think
No.
I think Chozo Test and Mother Brain probably would get 4s. I would probably, but I don't. Even as much as I love that Chozo Test fight, I don't think I can quite give that a 5.
I wouldn't either. And you know what? It's actually funny that you say that because I think like paradoxically, I would, if we were ranking out of 5, I would score the Chozo Test fight higher than Mother Brain. But there's just something about that Mother Brain fight that just makes it my favorite in this game. And maybe it's just like the realization of what the first game is going for, just like better executed mechanically, graphically, musically, etc., etc. So yeah, that being said, I'm pretty happy with our list. It was pretty close to what I had. I think the biggest difference for me, honestly, they're like on our list, I think Ridley and Imago switched spots, and that's about it. Everything else was pretty similar to what I had.
I feel like it was because I was really pulling for Acid Worm there. I feel like I kind of just dragged Acid Worm a little further in the rankings, but otherwise,
I'm okay with that. I like me a good Acid Worm, every now and then. So, well, there it is. That is our boss ranking for Metroid Zero Mission. We are hoping and praying that this game comes to NSO quickly because I mean we'd love to see more people get to play Zero Mission. It is I know that we were kind of a little bit harsh on the bosses there, but it's such a great experience that goes down so easy and is just like an awesome way for people that maybe haven't played Metroid before to get introduced to the series. So hopefully it's coming. I know we said it last week, but if you haven't played this in a long time, go and replay it. It's a blast. You're going to have a ton of fun, and it's really only going to take you like 2-3 hours, something like that. So go and do that. Next week, Alien in Review returns. We've actually pre-recorded the episode, so we've got it done already. We watched AVPR. I had never seen it before. We had some people already talking about it in the Discord. So I'm hoping that we have a lot of activity about this. I'm excited for everyone to listen to this because it's going to be... I think it was one of our better Alien reviews, actually, which is funny because it wasn't one of our better movies that we've watched an Alien in review. So you'll have to come and listen to the episode for the whole scoop. But that's coming next week. Of course, if there's like any Switch 2 news, we'll push it back. But at this point, who the hell knows? So that being said, any final thoughts on Zero Mission or our ranking before we go on and get out of here, Doom?
Not really. Just pretty much going to echo exactly what you said. Yeah, if you for some reason have not played Metroid Zero Mission yet, or if you have a friend in your life that's like getting into the series and they should, this is the game they should have started with, but if they haven't, get them on Zero Mission immediately and get them that sweet Omega Metroid guide to help them out along the way.
Hey.
Regardless if it's your first time playing or whether you're a veteran, we got tips and tricks to accommodate all sorts of players.
You know what I always kind of like to think too about our guides, like because I like to play a Metroidvania just and kind of go at my own pace and explore at my own pace, but like I feel like our guides are obviously for new players too, but it's just like also a different way to experience a game that maybe you've played a couple different times, like go a different path, collect the missiles and whatever in a different way. So yeah, Doom is right. Check that out, and maybe if you know Metroid Zero Mission like the back of your hand, I don't know, try our guide. Try a different route than you might usually try. So give it a shout.
Yeah,
all right.
If you want to do some speed booster exercises, I got plenty of speed booster shortcuts for you to try out. So definitely check those out.
That is the truth, and those were rocking and rolling over on that guide. So shout out to you, my friend, for that. All right, we are going to get out of here. Of course, we want to direct everybody over to OmegaMetroid.com. We got guides, we got news, we got maps, we got all kinds of stuff, plus a full library of every single episode of this podcast that's ever been made, and so much more. So go check out OmegaMetroid.com. Check us out wherever you get your podcast. Like, subscribe, rate, review, recommend, all that kind of stuff. Leave us a 5-star review. That'd be pretty sweet. We haven't had a big push for reviews lately, so maybe we should maybe we should encourage people to do that more. That's really cool, and we'd love to see it. Give us a follow rather on social wherever you are. We're at Omega Metroid Pod, at Spiteri316, at Duminal Cross. We're at that over on Blue Sky, Twitter. I think we're over on Threads. I have no idea if we're still over there or not, but give us a follow anyways. And lastly, we're over on Patreon as well. In fact, we're recording a Patreon episode in 2 days from now, continuing the great Metroid area ranking, and we're kind of getting to the good stuff here. We're closing in on some like the high tier areas, so lots of fun to be had over there. Give us a follow over on Patreon as well. That, my friends, is going to do it. We'll see you back here next week for Alien in Review when we visit the Predalien in Alien vs. Predator. Till then, everybody, take care.